Welcome.
Okay.
So moving forward, I think the weekend can have 7 p.m. and then the regular will have 6 p.m. Then that solves the problem. Is everybody okay?
Doc,
So
weekend
there'll be
7.
no clashes.
Doc,
The weekend will be 7 p.m.
Doc, weekend should be 6.
Weekend should be 6.
Yes.
And the regular should be 7.
Yes.
So we've sorted it out.
Yes.
Okay.
So weekend 6, regular 7.
You Yate.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
When you come, you know what?
So let me make you the host as well. Okay.
Okay. So I can admit the rest.
And stop disturbing with this your admission business.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Right. So when there is something,
Yoxin, mute your microphone. Yoxin, mute your microphone.
But you come
when there's what?
You tell me.
No. Hey,
don't worry.
Abigail.
He's on mute now. Don't worry. No, continue.
Abigail, I haven't seen you in a very long time.
Yeah, Doc, I wasn't well.
You weren't well. Okay, we'll talk later. Anyway, so today we are talking about ethics of clinical care. We are talking about confidentiality. Okay, so all aspects of the medical consultation are confidential. And this common law is recognized by the public and it's an essential background of an essential part of the background to consultation. So somebody would seek consultation because they know that it's confidential. And it allows the patient freedom of expression in the knowledge that disclosures made within the confines of the consulting room will not be made available to others. This is why a patient will come and feel free to tell you all the issues that they want to tell you. So the principle of confidentiality also applies to the medical records. So ideally, the patient's medical records are held by the clinician and the hospital, the folder room or whatever it is. The hospital records are not available to anybody else, and they are immune from the police powers of search. So unless the police have a warrant or there's a subpoena from court to say that bring your medical records, they cannot just come and look through your folder and make a judgment or whatever and tender it in as evidence in court. Now, they can be made available with the permission of the patient. And once disclosed, can be used in evidence in courts in both civil and criminal cases. Okay, so patients have a right to inspect their own medical records after seeking access in writing. So a patient can actually write to the hospital that, please give me a medical record or a medical report of whatever it is. Okay, and this in modern practice, this information is available to a whole wide range of health professionals and administrators, but the principle of confidentiality must still be strictly followed. So there are some exceptions to this principle of confidentiality, and legally, these are binding. So when the patient allows you to divulge information to a third party, or when their legal advisor allows it, the principle of confidentiality can be breached. When it is in the patient's interest, so this is subject to the discretion of the clinician. If there's an overriding duty to society as a whole, and then in cases of statutory disclosure, in certain situations where the inspection of medical records is allowed, and then also sometimes after death. So we'll look at these one by one. So with the permission of the patient, so the permission can be written or verbal. And a common example of relaxation of confidentiality with the patient's permission is when a doctor discusses the patient's problems or takes history with others present. So maybe a medical student or a nurse, okay? The patient should be given the opportunity to ask that the others should leave or they should stay before the consultation begins. So ideally, you should tell them that, oh, this person is so and so, okay? Because they do not know whether the confidentiality is binding to the people present or not. So they need to have the option of saying, please, can you excuse me? I want to talk to my physician assistant alone. Okay. Now, there are instances where confidentiality is breached in the patient's own interest. So, for example, when it is necessary that another family member should be informed about the nature of the patient's illness. So let me give an example. So, patient has tuberculosis, and in TB treatment, because the duration of treatment is so long, we always need a relative to come in addition to the patient, so that they go through what we call adherence counseling. So the patient is counseled together with the relative, so that they will serve as a support base to the patient to follow up and be sure that the patient is actually taking their medication. Another example is when a mentally incompetent patient is involved. So you may need to get somebody else to give whatever permission, and this usually requires a permission from a court. Then sometimes confidentiality can be breached when there's an overriding duty to society. So, for example, in the context of a pending violent crime, or if the patient has epilepsy to control a vehicle, then it is a responsibility of the clinician to inform the authorities. Or if the patient, so let's say abuse, for example, you suspect that the child is being abused, then you need to report to the authorities. I will try not to bring pediatrics into it because we'll talk about pediatric ethics separately. Or for example, a patient who comes in with a gunshot wound, okay, and you know definitely that when there's a gunshot wound, it could be an armed robber, for example. And so because of the overriding duty to society, you need to report to the police. Then there are also instances of the statutory disclosure. So confidentiality can be breached in certain cases of infectious diseases. So for example, the same tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a notifiable disease. Notifiable disease means that the public health authorities will have to be alerted. So if you have a case of tuberculosis, you have to send the patient's name and their details to the public health authorities. Okay, so this is still a breach of confidentiality, but it is under statutory disclosure. Okay, then also, so a court can ask that medical documents be released if they are regarded as necessary for the completion of a fair trial of an accused person. Yeah, I mean, I think it's self-explanatory. So the medical records belong to the hospital or the health authority. They don't belong to the patient, they don't belong to the physician assistant, they don't belong to the doctor. They belong to the hospital. Okay, so the patient has a lawful right to inspect their own medical records. They have a right to ask for medical reports. And this medical report can only be prepared with the permission of the patient, or a court can order medical report to be given. Now, generally, persons other than the patient have no right to inspect the medical records. So you have no right as a brother of the patient to come and pick the patient's folder and open it and be reading things that the patient is being given for the diagnosis that is being made. So these are very important for us. So in the same vein, for example, somebody calls you and says that, oh, I hear there's a patient in your facility by name so and so, May I know what is wrong with the patient? This often happens in the, like your friend calls you by the side and says that, oh, I hear this patient has come to your facility, blah, blah, blah. What are you managing for? All these things, you have to be careful. Sometimes the kind of conversations we have with our friends, you have to be careful, because if you divulge some information which you are not supposed to, by the time you realize you said something you are not supposed to, the person whose medical information you leaked can actually take you on and sue you for that. Okay, then after death too, this principle of confidentiality should extend to the patients who have died. So in the case of a number of deceased public figures, this principle may not be adhered to on the ground that there are matters of public health interest. Okay, but this is debatable. Okay, then organ donation. So if a tissue or an organ of a living patient is being donated to somebody else, there's no special ethical problem. I have a kidney, somebody needs it, I want to give it to them, there's no problem. Okay, but if it is there's a situation where maybe there's some financial implications, then ethical issues or ethical difficulties may arise. So for example, the donor should be of sound mind, shouldn't be under duress, and it must not be placed in a position to gain financially by the gift. So there's no financial involvement at all. But if it's a situation where maybe the patient is dead and you're doing a heart transplant, for example, then there's no issue. Once the relatives gives them go ahead, no special ethical problem would arise. And we all know that the sale of organs for transplantation is forbidden in all countries and is illegal. And the similar considerations applies to the acquisition of donor organs from a minor. Okay, that's also illegal. Then cadaveric organ donation, that is a deceased person in which maybe you're going to take the heart for a heart transplant, for example. So because deceased persons have only limited rights over their organs, there are laws to regulate the practice of cadaveric organ donation. So for example, in the UK, you can remove an organ from a deceased person if this is the wish of the patient. So a patient says that when I die, I want my heart to be given out, or my this or my that. I want my organs to be given out, or I want my organs to be given out for research or education. Once the next of kin has no problem, it can be allowed. Then let's say that the deceased person didn't wish it, or didn't say that I want my organs to be donated for A, B, C, D, but the next of kin gives the authorization. That can also be allowed. So these are the two situations. And sometimes religious constraints may arise. So for example, I know that Muslims do not take pork, and sometimes it extends to porcine products. What I mean is maybe somebody needs a valve. Somebody needs a heart valve, and then it's from a pig. So a Muslim may not accept it, for example. Or insulin, which is from a pig. It's debatable because then the insulin is a product. Oh, mute your microphone. Sometimes too, you need older people in the society to come to an agreement. And so you may need to dialogue to come to that conclusion, sorry. So basically, in Ghana, we don't have laws on organ donation because it is not something that is being done. But the sale of organs is illegal. But assuming we get to a point where we are doing transplantation and all that, then we may visit that. Usually, if a patient needs a transplant, it's either done in India or some other countries. Of course, the UK, the US, they are the prime, but typically because of the cost implications, a lot of patients will resort to going to India. All right. Are there any questions? I don't know how much time we have because we started late. Okay. Any questions? Please ask your questions. Should I continue?
Yes, please. You can
Okay.
continue, madam.
No questions.
Yes, doc. Continue, please.
Yeah,
You
please
must
go continue.
Doesn't have you, but Madam, you ask the question. Ask. Don't worry.
Okay.
We are writing them down.
So there was no thank you at the end of your slide. That's by the way.
Thank you. At the end of the slide. So it ended abruptly. My usual.
The usual, yeah. Look, we understand. Don't worry.
This one is plenty menopause. Okay.
Oh,
So
at this time.
resuscitation. So resuscitation. So of course, we all know that when somebody stops breathing, we have to resuscitate the patient. And we also know that resuscitation is not always successful. Sometimes the patient would recognize that their condition is terminal, either from what they've been told or from how they see the situation going. And so they may request that resuscitation should not be attempted. And this is a valid request. So if a patient says that I have terminal illness, if my heart stops beating, don't resuscitate, it's a valid request and it needs to be carried out. But you have to be sure that the patient understands. So sometimes the patient is so ill that there is doubt that it would be appropriate to resuscitate them in case they suffer a cardiac arrest. And so this is a very dicey thing on the part of those caring for the patient. Sometimes it brings about feelings like, so are you saying that this patient's life is not worth saving? Or is it that the patient is terminal, so we should allow the patient to die, and it sort of goes against what we believe as clinicians, that we should do everything to save life. Sometimes resuscitation for a few hours would just prolong, or should I say prolong, postpone death, but the death will come anyway, it's inevitable. Okay, so the decision to withhold resuscitation is a difficult decision. Sometimes you need to consider the clinical ethics committee, and then you also need the patient's consent on that. And it's important to respect the views of the patient. It's very important to know that relatives have no legal rights in deciding whether you should resuscitate the patient or not. Okay. And the other time we were talking about the fact that the patient is there on the ventilator, or patient is there, and the family is being drained, but the patient is still there and is not going. The family doesn't have the right to say that do not resuscitate this patient. Sometimes it's important to be sure that it's the patient's request for no resuscitation is not as a result of depression. And so it's important that we discuss the patient's position very well. Most patients near to death are aware of their situation. And so the discussion is important on the part of the health practitioners. And usually we have to start that discussion. And this discussion is important because it may give the patient the opportunity to discuss family matters with their family more openly. So I remember one of my aunties had endometrial cancer, and she was admitted at 37. It was terminal. I mean, it was so advanced, and the doctors told me that, as of this one, there's nothing to be done. And I remember having a discussion with my dad and asking him whether he thinks she should be made aware of her terminal illness or not. And so we came to the conclusion that she should be aware. Of course, medically, that was the right thing to do. But when it's a relative, it becomes a little more difficult. It's difficult to take a purely clinical decision. So we made that decision. And then ultimately, apparently there were feuding factions in her house. She has 2 sets of children from 2 different men. And so, I mean, when she came to that realization, she decided to broker peace, call them separately, call them together, and then everything was sorted out. There was peaceful, whatever, before she finally passed on. So sometimes it's important to give the relative this opportunity, the patient this opportunity. And this agreement needs to be documented in the patient's notes. Very, very important. Most hospitals will have a formal protocol, a formal consent form, but it's always wise to involve the most senior clinician in the patient's care on these discussions. So that it's not like you, the intern, you went to sit in your corner and then you drafted something and wrote it down. A lot of big hospitals have a resuscitation officer, and most of the time their duty is to review these decisions. Now, a patient should always be resuscitated when there's cardiovascular collapse and their wishes are unknown. So I'm not saying that, I think I'll stop at ethics committee because we have 8 minutes to go to allow for your questions. I'm not saying that the the patient is terminal, so when they stop breathing or their heart stops beating because it's terminal illness, you should leave them alone and watch them die. No. What I'm saying is that sometimes when the patient's condition is terminal, you may want to open up the discussion for this to occur. You may want to open up the discussion and let the patient know that their condition is terminal. Let them understand the implications of resuscitation. Let them understand if resuscitation is futile. And then let them judge for themselves and say that, okay, do not resuscitate me if I pass away. But if the patient's wishes are not known, then by all means, whichever patient is in your care, once they suffer cardiopulmonary collapse, you need to resuscitate and bring them back. Okay, but of course, we know that resuscitation can be successful or unsuccessful. But once the wishes of the patients are not known, it behoves on you as a practitioner to go all out and resuscitate the patient. Okay. Please, are there any questions? We have just about 7 minutes more, so I'm just going to stop here and allow for your questions. Any questions? Hello? Hey, I have questions.
Hi.
How come?
Hi.
What's that?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I'm not saying anything.
Hey, why don't you have questions? I'm really
What's
shocked.
that?
So no questions.
Like that.
Okay, and yeah, bye-bye.
Madam,
Yes.
Madam.
No questions, madam.
Talking of
Why
confidentiality.
Talking of what?
Confidentiality.
Uh-huh.
In a laboratory, maybe if the patient comes to the lab and run a test, we have a phlebotomist who will take the sample, a bench worker who will work on the sample, and whoever will enter the results. So
yes.
Can the patient decide, as in he doesn't or she doesn't want maybe all of us to know the result or something? Because I'm very confused over that, because you said something like in a consulting room, the patient can say maybe I don't want all of you to be here.
Yeah, but in the lab, the patient cannot say that I don't want the lab. Who will work on it?
So can you call that one to confidential? Can you say there's confidentiality over there?
You are all bound by. What's wrong with me? You are all supposed to keep that information confidential. You see, the reason why the patient comes to hospital and allows the blood to be taken and goes back for the results is because they believe that everybody is bound by confidentiality. And that's how it should be. So if you live in a community where you know everybody and the patient comes and you make a diagnosis of HIV, you are not allowed to go out in the community and say that Mr. A has HIV.
Yeah.
So the confidentiality is binding to everybody working in the hospital.
So why is it that in a consulting room, if that's the case, in a consulting room, the patient can insist to let maybe a nurse go out to talk to only the clinician or something?
Because they are not comfortable with the nurse.
But they can come to the lab and maybe 4 or 5 lab technicians are there and they are okay. Which we see.
Yeah, but the patient has no choice. You see,
Okay.
so don't forget the fact that in the lab, there's no choice. But in the consulting room, the patient has a choice.
Okay.
If you are there with, the other thing is also that you need to seek their consent. So if there's a student nurse in the consulting room and you introduce the patient and then the patient says, I don't want a student here.
Okay.
You have to let them go.
Doctor, please, I have a question.
I'm not done.
Okay.
Please. Please, I'm not done.
I'm done.
Let me finish.
Okay, I'm not done.
Madam,
Finish up.
Madam, there was a case, and there was one gentleman who came to the lab and ran a syphilis test, and it was positive. So I knew the girlfriend. The girlfriend was my friend. So how to, I think, just explain the thing to his best friend. And the best friend went ahead and told the girlfriend, I don't know how the whole thing happened. So I was there and the girlfriend called me. The guy said he is coming to the clinic because he knows I'm a friend to the girlfriend. So probably I'm the one who informed her that a man is having this kind of issue. And it became a whole lot of stuff.
But didn't the girlfriend say that it wasn't you?
Yes, so I told the girlfriend, I didn't tell you anything, and there's no way I will ever do that. So can't you just talk to your guy too? And the guy still came here and kind of.
So he came to beat you up. Daniel.
No, he didn't beat me up, but actually came to the director. He came first to the director that this is what has happened. And he suspects I'm the one.
But you see, he's actually supposed to tell his girlfriend because it's a sexually transmitted infection. I mean, it's very selfish for a man to have syphilis and not tell the woman about it. That's so bad.
He's scared maybe the lady too might think he cheated or something.
She left him anyway.
I don't know.
Yeah, he doesn't deserve her.
Because these kind of issues, it can happen. You can have a problem and discuss it with your friend, and later maybe a friend you don't know whether you can trust. You can trust, like my issue.
Yes, so Ivan, what it is that the person cannot come and say that I don't want you to be the one working on my lab. What they can do is we have less than a minute. So I think if it goes off, you can rejoin.
Okay.
So what they can do is that if they don't want you, then they should go elsewhere and have the lab done. But they cannot say that I don't want the lab people to work. They are the people at the lab. There's no option. There's no alternative. This is different from the consulting room. In fact, in the consulting room setting, you are the physician assistant. Okay, so that is different from in the lab setting. In the lab setting, there are alternatives, but they'll have to go outside the hospital to access those alternatives. If you are the only person on duty and they say they don't want you, there's nothing that can be done. If you are in the consulting room with the nurse and they say that I'm not comfortable with this